I have worked at the Gettysburg National Military Park Visitor Center Museum Bookstore. That's the exact title of my job, yes. For over a year now. During this time, I've met some interesting people. It's actually been a really good work experience. And I've also learned a little bit about the Gettysburg Foundation, as well as the history behind Gettysburg. Now, Gettysburg was the bloodiest battle of the Civil War. Over 7,000 people died, and there was about 23,000 casualties in total. On top of this, it was a major turning point for the Union Army during the Civil War. So obviously, this is very sacred ground for a lot of people. It's sacred ground for people in the Gettysburg Foundation. Now, the Gettysburg Foundation, in the simplest terms that they put on their website, has a few goals. To acquire and preserve the authenticity of battlefield lands, buildings, and artifacts. Improve the visitor experience. Educate the public about democracy. And then to strengthen their financial goal. Now you might be wondering, why do you need this? Why do you need to have this foundation going around and claiming land in order to preserve it, to make it look like what it did 150 years ago when the battle took place? Well, history shows that humans haven't treated historic land sites all too well. And I can show you a few examples here. First being the Empress of Ireland. The Empress of Ireland was a passenger liner, and in 1914, another ship known as the Storstad crashed right into the side, and the Empress of Ireland sank in just 15 minutes. Over 11,000 people died, and it actually had more passenger deaths than the Titanic. And ever since its sinking, it sunk in fairly shallow water, so divers were easily able to get to it. And they stole many items from the wreck, such as suitcases, books, belongings of the passengers. So this was obviously seen as dishonorable, and museums won't even accept stolen items from the wreck today. Another example I can think of is the Atacama Desert in Chile. This desert, because of its extremely dry climate, is able to hold many of the world's oldest mummies, as well as many other artifacts. And now, starting in 2009, the car rally was held there. That's the car rally is where a bunch of motorbikes, ATV vehicles, all go racing across the dunes, having a good time. But unfortunately, due to bad organization, many of the artifacts were damaged with tire marks, some completely destroyed. Now, even Gettysburg has seen its fair share of desecration. Here on the far right is the Gettysburg trolley, which operated until 1916. What this did was a trolley that went through the park, carving a cement pathway through the battlefield so it could traverse itself. And then in the middle here we have advertisements painted onto the rocks at the historical site of Culp's Hill. Culp's Hill was the only site of the battlefield that was active for all 3 days. Then furthermore, more recently, this is the Gettysburg Observation Tower. Now this was seen as an eyesore by many, including myself, honestly, and it was also considered a little bit dishonorable because it was placed right in the middle of the battlefield. And luckily in the year 2000, it was torn down because, well, doesn't make the battlefield look all too authentic, does it? So this is why I think the Gettysburg Foundation is needed. Oops. It works to preserve the land so stuff like this does not happen. Now, how do they preserve the land? Well, here's how. This is Little Round Top right here. This is one of their more recent excavations. as to make the land a little bit better. They went through and they did repair some of the pathways, parking lots that visitors would traverse on, and they also went through and cut down some of the vegetation to make it look a little bit more authentic. Another example, would be the train station that Lincoln came to and departed on when he delivered his Gettysburg Address. And then they actually destroyed the old Cyclorama building in an effort to make Cemetery Ridge and Cemetery Hill look more authentic. And now it is in the place I work at, the National Gettysburg. I can't even say it now. And I've actually seen it. It's pretty cool. Another thing they do is monuments. They go around and preserve the monuments because some of them are over 100 years old, so they need maintenance. This one right here is the Pennsylvania monument that my great-great-great-great-grandfather is on. He was actually wounded in the Battle of Gettysburg. Now this is where another controversy arrives. You may know that there's a little movement that was going around where people would advocate that Confederate monuments and statues be torn down due to a variety of issues, but here's what I have to say to that. The vast majority of the Confederate soldiers did not necessarily have the same views that the Confederate leaders did, the Confederate politicians. Furthermore, in 1938, the Peace Light ceremony was held by President Franklin Eleanor Roosevelt. And what happened at the Peace Light ceremony was that surviving soldiers from the Confederacy and the Union gathered and shook hands as to lay the war aside. So when many people go around and advocate that they think they should tear down these statues, it kind of washes away this big resolve that these soldiers had near the end. In another way, the Gettysburg Foundation helps is what I said at the beginning: educating the public about democracy. What they do is they take a nonpartisan approach, focusing more on the history that they know. As to teach the public about democracy, they travel to many campuses, schools, churches, gathering places in general, and it's not just local either. They went as far as to go to Sioux Falls in South Dakota, and they went to another town in Texas just last year in 2019. Now, unfortunately, with the current coronavirus going around, a lot of these efforts had to be canceled. But what the foundation does all relies on you. It relies on donations. And now donating can benefit you and not just the park. There are many ways you can donate. One way is to become a member of the Friends of Gettysburg. This is a membership that you would acquire if you just wanted to show support for the park, if you had a really good interest in the history of the park, the history of the battle, or even wanted to volunteer. But there are simpler and cheaper ways to do it as well that, again, benefit you. One way is to go to the place I work at Gettysburg National Military Center and donate your change when you check out. Now, 100% of the change goes to battlefield preservation. Another thing, a lot of you, well actually all of you, attend Gettysburg's Hack campus. Now this campus offers a few good American history courses, 2 of which I have taken, and I found that a few of the books that the courses require you to read are actually found in the museum bookstore. So what you could do to show your support for the park, if you wanted to, is to buy your required reading at the bookstore. By the way, a portion of every item sold does go to preservation. And then when you're done, you can donate your change. Another way is that they always tell me that they want me to sell these reusable tote bags. So if you want to preserve the environment and also show even more support for the battlefield, that would be great. I might also get a raise too, so that would be awesome. But the Gettysburg Foundation has done many amazing things since its foundation in 1989. We can't do it without you, though. It does require some donations, but anything is acceptable, and we accept the littlest bit. Everything is appreciated. And you don't even have to donate. You can simply show your support by visiting the visitor center. We'd all appreciate that. And I wish you would support this cause, because me and many other people do want this historical site to be preserved for many years to come.